Welcome to our open book. Good to be with you tonight. Other David Faust, Andrea Elizabeth Mitchell, Karen Smith, Rhonda, SR, Kate, Margaret Peterson, Richard Berkeley, David Faust, Sandra Partial. Good to see you. This is a rough section we're going to be reading tonight. It's the 60th anniversary of In Cold Blood, the classic reportage and essentially news story told as a novel, if you please. Truman Capote. We got close to all of it. The Outsider from the Upper East Side of New York. Charmed the people he had to talk to them in Kansas. Of course, it begins with outrageous and savage crime. How they're Jennifer Kathleen Gibbons, Nancy Steele Laurie. The murder of the Clutter family. Total family of innocence. Hi there, Mr. Dickens. And of course, for just $50 and just not that any amount would be worth it. Turned out to be $50 and a radio from the bedroom of one of the teenagers. Sickening crime. Hello, Ralph Rice. So, the people, of course, we know the killers. Dick Hitchcock and Perry Smith. Finally been apprehended with a stolen car and some boots that might reveal something in that stolen car in Las Vegas. Kansas Bureau of Investigation officers began to interrogate them there, and at one point Dick Hitchcock drops a dime, as they say, on Perry Smith and says, well, Perry's the one who committed the crime, the murders, not me. I was just there for the robbery. He committed the murders. Alvin Dewey, the Kansas Bureau of Investigation agent we get to know best, is part of the group driving Perry Smith back, because, of course, they're keeping the two men separate from each other, back from Nevada to Kansas. On an Arizona highway, hi there, Mark Gladstone, two-car caravan is flashing across sagebrush country, the mesa country of hawks and rattlesnakes and towering red rocks. Dewey is driving the lead car. Perry Smith sits behind him, and Dunce, Agent Dunce, is sitting in the back seat. Smith is handcuffed, and the handcuffs are attached to a security belt by a short length of chain, an arrangement so restricting his movements that he cannot smoke unaided. When he wants a cigarette, Dewey must light it for him and place it in between his lips, a task the detective finds repellent, I would imagine, for it seems such an intimate action, the kind of thing he'd done while he was courting his wife. On the whole, the prisoner ignores his guardians and their sporadic attempts to goad him by repeating parts of Hitchcock's hour-long tape-recorded confession. He says he tried to stop you, Perry, but says he couldn't, says he was scared you'd shoot him, and yes, sir, Perry, it's all your fault. Hitchcock himself, he says he wouldn't harm the fleas on a dog. Well, none of this outwardly, at any rate, agitates Smith. He continues to contemplate the scenery, to read Burma Shave doggerel. Burma Shave ads used to be on large. You don't see them anymore because they block vision, but obviously along the highway. Forgive me, I lost my place. Burma Shave doggerel and to count the carcasses of shotgun coyotes festooning ranch fences. Billboards, I'm sorry. Dewey, not anticipating any exceptional response, says, Hitchcock tells us you're a natural-born killer. Doesn't bother you a bit. Says one time out there in Las Vegas, you went after a colored man with a bicycle chain, whipped him to death. Yellow eraser replaced. To Dewey's surprise, the prisoner gasps. He twists around in his seat until he can see it through the rear window. The motorcade's second car sees inside it the tough boy. Turning back, he stares at the dark streak of desert highway. I thought it was a stunt. I didn't believe you. That Dick let fly, that tough boy. A real brass boy wouldn't harm the fleas on a dog. He'd just run over the dog. I never killed anyone, so Dick says he was afraid of me. That's amusing. What he don't know is I almost did shoot him. Dewey lights 2 cigarettes, one for himself, one for the prisoner. Well, tell us about it, Perry. Smith smokes with closed eyes and explains, I'm thinking I want to remember this just the way it was. He pauses for quite a while. Well, it all started with a letter I got while I was out in Buhl, Idaho. That was September or October. The letter was from Dick. Said he was on to his cinch, the perfect score. I didn't answer him, but he wrote again urging me to come back to Kansas and go partners with him. He never said what kind of score it was, just that it was a surefire cinch. Now, as it happened, I had another reason for wanting to be in Kansas around that time, a personal matter that I'd just as soon keep to myself. It's got nothing to do with this deal. Only that otherwise I wouldn't have gone back to Kansas, but I did. And Dick met me at the bus station in Kansas City. We drove out to the farm, his parents' place, but they didn't want me there. I'm very sensitive. I usually know what people are feeling. Like you. He means Dewey, but does not look at him. You hate handing me a butt. Cigarette butt. That's your business. I don't blame you any more than I blame Dick's mother. Fact is, she's a very sweet person, but she knew what I was, a friend from the Waltz. Capital T, capital W, from inside prison. And she just didn't want me in her house. Christ, I was glad to get out, go to a hotel. Dick took me to a hotel in Olathe. We bought some beer and carried it up to the room, and that's when Dick outlined what he had in mind. He said, after I'd left Lansing, he settled with someone who once worked for a wealthy wheat grower out in western Kansas, Mr. Clutter. Dick drew me a diagram of the Clutter house. He knew where everything was, doors, halls, bedrooms. He said, one of the ground floor rooms was used as an office, and in the office there was a safe, a wall safe. He said Mr. Clutter needed it because he always kept on hand large sums of cash. Never less than $10,000. The plan was to rob the safe, and if we were seen, well, whoever saw us would have to go. Dick must have said it a million times. No witnesses. Dewey says, how many of those witnesses did he think there might be? I mean, how many people did he expect to find in the Clutter house? Well, that's what I wanted to know, but he wasn't sure. At least 4, probably 6, and it was possible the family might have guests. He thought we ought to be ready to handle up to a dozen. Dewey groans, Dunce whistles, and Smith, smiling wanly, adds, me too. Seemed to me that was a little off, 12 people, but Dick said it was a cinch. He said, we're going to go in there and splatter those walls with hair. The mood I was in, I let myself be carried along, but also, I'll be honest, I had faith in Dick. He struck me as being very practical, the masculine type, and I wanted the money as much as he did. I wanted to get it and go to Mexico. But I don't know, I hoped we'd do it without violence. Seemed to me we could if we wore masks. We argued about it. On the way out there to Holcomb, I wanted to stop and buy some black silk stockings to wear over our heads. But Dick felt that even with a stocking, he could still be identified because of his bad eyes all the same. And we got to Emporia. Agent Dunn says, hold on, Perry, you're jumping ahead. Go back to Olathe. What time did you leave there? Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. 1:30. We left just after lunch and drove to Emporia. So we bought some rubber gloves and a roll of cord, the knife and the shotgun, the shells. Dick had brought all that from home. But he didn't want to look for black stockings. Got to be quite an argument. Somewhere on the outskirts of Emporia, we passed a Catholic hospital, and I persuaded him to stop and go inside and try to buy some black stockings from the nuns. I knew nuns wore them. But he only made believe. He came out and said they couldn't sell him any. I wasn't sure he'd even tried, and he confessed it. He said it was a pukey idea. The nuns would have thought he was crazy. So we didn't stop again till Great Bend. That's where we bought the tape, had dinner there, a big dinner. It put me to sleep. When I woke up, we were just coming into Garden City. Seemed like a real dead dog town. We stopped for gas at a filling station. Dewey asked if you remembered which one. I believe it was a Phillips 66. What time was this? Around midnight. Dick said it was 7 miles more to Holcomb. All the rest of the way, he kept talking to himself, saying, well, this ought to be here and that ought to be there, according to the instruction he'd memorized. I hardly realized it when we went through Holcomb. It was such a little settlement. We crossed a railroad track. Suddenly Dick said, this is it. Has to be it. It was the entrance to a private road lined with trees. We slowed down and turned off the lights. Didn't need them. I counted the moon. There was nothing else up there. Not a cloud, nothing, just that full moon. It was like the broad day, and when we started up the road, Dick said, look at this spread, the barns, the house. Don't tell me this guy ain't loaded. But I didn't like the setup, the atmosphere. It was just sort of too impressive. Parked in the shadows of a tree, and while we were sitting there, a light came in, not in the main house, but a house maybe 100 yards to the left. Dick said it was the hired man's house. He knew because of the diagram. But he said it was a damn sight nearer the Clutter house than it's supposed to be. Then the light went off. Mr. Dewey, the witness you mentioned, is that who you meant, the hired man? Agent Dewey said no, he never heard a sound, but his wife was nursing a sick baby. And he said they were up and down the whole night. A sick baby. Well, I wondered, while we were still sitting there, that happened again. The light flashed on and off, and that really put bubbles in my blood. I told Dick to count me out. If he was determined to go ahead with it, he'd have to do it alone. He started the car. We were leaving, I thought. Bless Jesus, I've always trusted my intuitions. They've saved my life more than once. But halfway down the road, Dick stopped. He was sore as hell. I could see what he was thinking. Here I've set up this big score. We've come all this way, and now this punk wants to chicken out. He said, maybe you think I ain't got the guts to do it alone, but by God, I'll show you who's got guts. There was some liquor in the car. We each had a drink. I told him, okay, Dick, I'm with you. So we turned back. Parked where we had before. In the shadows of a tree, Dick put on gloves. I'd already put on mine. He carried the knife and a flashlight. I had the gun. The house looked tremendous in the moonlight, looked empty. I remember hoping there was nobody home. Dewey said, but you saw a dog? No. The family had an old gun-shy dog. We couldn't understand why he didn't bark unless he'd seen a gun and bolted. Well, I didn't see anything or anybody. That's why I never believed it about an eyewitness. Not an eyewitness, witness, someone whose testimony associates you and Hickok with this case. Oh, uh-huh, huh. And Dick always said he'd be too scared. Huh. Dunce, this is Agent Dunce again, not to be diverted, reminds him Hickok had the knife, you had the gun. How did you get into the house? Perry says the door was unlocked, a side door, but it took us into Mr. Clutter's office. Then we waited in the dark, listening, but the only sound was the wind. It was quite a little wind outside. It made the trees move, and you could hear the leaves. One window was curtained with Venetian blinds, but moonlight was coming through. I closed the blinds, and Dick turned on his flashlight. We saw the desk. The safe was supposed to be in the wall directly behind the desk, but he couldn't find it. It was a paneled wall. And there were books and framed maps. I noticed on a shelf a terrific pair of binoculars. I decided I was going to take them with me when we left. Did you? Asked Dewey, for the binoculars had not been missed. Smith nods. We sold them in Mexico. Sorry, go on. Well, when we couldn't find the safe, Dick doused the flashlight and we moved in darkness out of the office and across a parlor, a living room. Dick whispered to me, and I couldn't walk quieter. But he was just as bad. Every step we took made a racket. We came to a hall and a door, and Dick, remembering the diagram, said it was a bedroom. He shined the flashlight and opened the door. A man said, "Honey?" He'd been asleep. Then he blinked and he said, "Is that you, honey?" Dick asked him, "Are you Mr. Clutter?" He was wide awake now. He sat up and said, "Who is it? What do you want?" Dick told him, very polite, like we were a couple of door-to-door salesmen. "We want to talk to you, sir, in your office, please." Imagine using the word polite to describe waking somebody up at gunpoint. And Mr. Clutter, barefoot, just wearing pajamas, he went with us to the office as we turned on the office lights. Until then, he hadn't been able to see us very good. I think what he saw hit him hard. Dick says, "Now, sir, all we want you to do is show us where you keep that safe." But Mr. Clutter says, "What safe?" My feeling was nobody had ever spoken to Mr. Clutter like that, but he looked Dick straight in the eye and told him, being very mild about it, said, well, he was sorry, he just didn't have any safe. Dick tapped him on the chest with the knife and says, "Show us where that safe is or you're going to be a good bit sorrier." But Mr. Clutter, oh, you could see he was scared, but his voice stayed mild and steady. He went on denying that he had a safe. Sometime along in there, I fixed the telephone, the one in the office. I ripped out the wires, and I asked Mr. Clutter if there were any other telephones in the house. He said, yes, there was one in the kitchen. So I took the flashlight and went to the kitchen. When I found the telephone, I removed the receiver and cut the line with a pair of pliers. Then, hitting back, I heard a noise. The creaking overhead. I stopped at the foot of the stairs leading to the second floor. It was dark, and I didn't dare use the flashlight. But I could tell there was someone there at the top of the stairs, silhouetted against a window, a figure that moved. Dewey, this is Agent Dewey again, imagines it must have been Nancy. He'd often theorized on the basis of the gold wristwatch found tucked in the toe of a shoe in her closet. Nancy had awakened, heard persons in the house, thought they might be thieves, and prudently hidden the watch, their most valuable property. For all I knew, maybe it was somebody with a gun, but Dick wouldn't even listen to me. He was so busy playing tough boy, bossing Mr. Clutter around. Now he brought him back to the bedroom. He was counting the money in Mr. Clutter's billfold. It was about $30. He threw the billfold on the bed and told him, "You got more money in this house than that. A rich man like you living on a spread like this." Mr. Clutter said that's all the cash he had and explained he always did business by check. He offered to write us a check. Dick just blew up. "What kind of Mongolians do you think we are?" And I thought Dick was ready to smash him. So I said, "Dick, listen to me. There's somebody awake upstairs." Mr. Clutter told us the only people upstairs were his wife and his son and daughter. Dick said if she did, it would be very little, few dollars, and he asked us, really kind of broke down, please not to bother her because she was an invalid. She'd been very ill for a long time. But Dick insisted on going upstairs. He made Mr. Clutter lead the way. I'm just going to read a little bit more tonight. At the foot of the stairs, Mr. Clutter switched on lights that lighted the hall above, and as we were going up, he said, "I don't know why you boys want to do this. I've never done you any harm. I never even saw you before. I never saw you before." That's when Dick told him, "Shut up. When we want you to talk, we'll tell you." Wasn't anybody in the upstairs hall, and all the doors were shut? Mr. Clutter pointed out the rooms where the boy and girl were supposed to be sleeping and opened his wife's door. He lighted a lamp beside the bed and told her, "It's all right, sweetheart. Don't be afraid. These men, they just want some money." She was a thin, frail sort of woman in a long white nightgown. The minute she opened her eyes, she started to cry. She says, talking to her husband, "Sweetheart, I don't have any money." He was holding her hand, patting it. He said, "Now don't cry, honey. It's nothing to be afraid of. It's just I gave these men all the money I had, but they want some more. They believe we have a safe somewhere in the house. I told them we don't." Dick raised his hand like he was going to crack him across the mouth. It says, "Didn't I tell you to shut up?" Mrs. Clutter said, "But my husband's telling you the God's truth. There isn't any safe." And Dick answers back, "I know goddamn well you got a safe. And I'll find it before I leave here." And he asked her where she kept her purse. The purse was in a bureau drawer. Dick turned it inside out, found just some small change and $1 or two. I motioned him to come into the hall. I wanted to discuss the situation. I'm going to leave it there tonight. I'm going to pick it up at like exactly that point tomorrow. Boy, this is alarming and altogether gripping all at once, isn't it? Ugh. In cold blood. Once again, goodness gracious. So thanks for being with us tonight on our open book. I actually have duties in the kitchen now. It's veggie burger. Boy, this is a brilliant book. Yeah, thank you, Joan. Thank you for reminding us. Yeah, thanks for reminding us. And I can't wait to pick it up tomorrow. All right. See you later. Thanks for being with us tonight. I've enjoyed this. Part of it has been occasioned by the fact that we're away from our usual set downstairs. But it's been nice to get to know this book and to be with you all. So take care. See you later. Bye bye.